Hello folks, how are you all doing? Okay. Yeah, this is one I've been a little bit excited for. You might have noticed it over the past few weeks. They've, just been slightly looking forward to this one. We are here to see the wonderful Mr. Anthony Burrill. And he's going to be talking to you about his process. He's going to be talking to you about his works and his life. And I hope you're really, really going to enjoy it. I've got a few little bits and bobs to mention before we start. Hope you enjoyed today's session. Get involved as much as possible. Any photos that you may take, please tag on your social media accounts with hashtag IW22. This will get you the opportunity to win a £50 Amazon voucher for the best photo. Don't forget you can still book onto any upcoming events at iw.confetti.ac.uk. Make sure you sign using your Confetti or enter your email address. You can also check out previous year's talks and masterclasses from the on-demand section of the website. In case of emergency, please be aware of the evacuation points. The evacuation point in Metronome is, in the event of the fire alarm, please make your way to the nearest fire exit and go to the corner of Brook Street. Right. How do I introduce this gentleman? In 1997, I met one of my heroes. I met Mr. David Bowie, and I met him in the car park at Rock City. It was a fleeting meet. It was like, oh, shake my hand quick, oh, there he goes. But I shook David Bowie's hand. In terms of graphic design, I don't think I've been as excited to meet anybody as David Bowie since that day. And I'm going to hand you over now to the fantastic and wonderful Mr. Anthony Burrill. Please make him feel as welcome as I do.
That was quite an introduction there. That's my David Bowie impersonation. I don't think. Yeah, thanks. I'm a bit blown away by that. Who's the most famous person I've met? I once met the Queen of Holland. That was quite amazing as well. Thank you for inviting me to come along and speak. It's just brilliant to be able to get back in the world and get back into doing these kind of things face to face. I'm sure you've all enjoyed as much as I have online tutorials and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, hopefully that's all behind us now. I'm just going to kick off with a very quick overview of stuff that I've done. It was a really busy week. That's my sister on the right. That's me on the left, and that's Misty the pony in the middle. So that photograph was taken when I was about 8 years old in the living room of our house. So yeah, weird, eh? So yeah, and that's not wine; it's Vimto. So fast forward a few years. This is when I was at Royal College. So this is 1990. So what's that? 32 years ago. So yeah, what happened to the hair? It's disappeared. So you can kind of see the sort of slightly bewildered look on my face. That's when I'd first moved to London, and yeah, I didn't know what the heck was going on. It was kind of very, yeah, it was like a completely new environment that I was in. So I grew up. I'll just put that over there. Oops. I grew up in Oldham, so just on the outskirts of Manchester, and when I was at school, I was always really into art, and I just really enjoyed being in the art room. All my friends were off playing football, and I was looking at textures and shapes and colours. So the art teacher said, "I think you'd probably better go to art school." So I went to Oldham College of Technology to do a foundation course. And then after that, I applied for various colleges. I applied to go to Preston, but I didn't get a place there. Idiots, I know. I had my heart set on going to Preston because it was this like brand new college building, amazing facilities. Everyone looked lovely, and I just thought that's the kind of place I'd love to go. And my second choice was Leeds Polytechnic, which is this kind of crumbling concrete brutalist monstrosity, and everyone there was a goth. And I was like, there's no way I'm going there. So I didn't get a place at Preston and ended up going to Leeds Polytechnic. I resisted becoming a goth. I became a raver instead. So this is kind of like late 80s. So I was going to raves, I was going to the Hacienda, listening to Chicago house music, growing my hair long, and just having a great time. So I was at Leeds for 3 years. It was a really kind of multidisciplinary course. I did kind of sculpture and printmaking, film, animation, typography, just everything really. So it was like an extended foundation course. And then towards the end of it, the tutor said I should apply to the Royal College to do an MA. So I was like, all right, that sounds good. So I applied to do an MA in graphic design. Went down, I had an interview. I just took all these collages that I'd made with me, kind of like quite typographic stuff. And I got a place. So that was in '89 when I started at Royal College. And that's when this photo was taken. So I'd spent the summer in Ibiza pursuing the Balearic dream, and arrived back in London. And it was just like this whole, my life was kind of changing. I was meeting new people and kind of having amazing experiences. And just being in London kind of changed who I was. I ended up staying in London. I met my wife at college, and the rest is history, really. So this was our studio at the Royal College. It was a complete dump, but amazingly kind of creative space. So I shared this space with a couple of other students, and we just used to like pick stuff up off the streets and stick it on the walls. So where the graphic design course was like a separate building to the main Royal College building. So we were just in this old Kensington townhouse that was due for demolition. So they just kind of let us get on with it, really. So we kind of created this environment that was like just full of junk and things that we'd picked up off the streets and discarded material. So this was the stuff I was making work with. So I would kind of photocopy typography and create little publications and kind of rudimentary posters and stuff like that. So I was just like finding my way into graphic design and figuring out, finding my voice and imagining what it would be like once I left college. So I graduated in 1991, ancient history. So I'm just going to give you a short history lesson now about graphic design and its role in political communication. So this is something that's become more and more important to me throughout my career. So when I left the Royal College, I just kind of started working, kind of doing whatever I could to find work, really. So I did work, I worked at MTV for a while doing animations and kind of on-screen stuff, and that kind of led me into advertising. So I ended up working on TV commercials. I directed a few TV commercials, weirdly, with actors and stuff like that. It's like, how did that happen? And at the same time, I was kind of working on typography stuff and illustration, just a whole range of things, really. I've always kind of been interested in lots of different things and finding out how to kind of create different stuff. So as my sort of career developed, I began to think about the kind of work I was doing, who I was working for, what my work meant, and I think after 10 years of working commercially, I became quite sort of disillusioned with the kind of work I was doing. I knew that I wanted to do something that was more socially engaged, but, you know, kind of had something to say and would kind of connect with how I was feeling as a person, the things that I was seeing in the world, and how I wanted to, you know, add my voice to kind of what was going on, really. So I kind of slowly began getting involved in more kind of, I suppose, like kind of protest stuff, but working with charities and working on projects that engaged with kind of meatier subjects. So I kind of left behind the kind of advertising world as much as I could, and working with clients, and began creating my own work and then working with NGOs and charities and things. So that kind of takes me back to like thinking how graphic design is incredibly important, how we use graphic design to talk about important big subjects. So this is just over 100 years ago, the suffragette movement in Britain. So women campaigning for the vote. So a few years ago, I did a project for the London College of Fashion about the suffragettes, and I was looking at all this amazing archive material. So this kind of like pinafore printed with type to kind of convey a message. I just thought it was incredible that messages like this could be communicated through clothing, and in such a kind of incredibly interesting and ingenious way that here she is in this kind of Victorian context, but kind of communicating this message. So I was looking at these kind of messages and the typography, and all these posters are printed using letterpress and wood type. And that's something that I use a lot in my work, is kind of antique wood type of a similar age to all this stuff. So there's a connection between the typography that I use and the kind of inherent kind of connection with this stuff. So there's a kind of historic context that maybe isn't massively apparent in what I do, but for me it kind of traces a line back to this stuff. So this is one of the ways that suffragettes got their message kind of under the radar. So this is a coin of the realm, and it's stamped with votes for women and then put back into circulation, so that you'd go to the old timey shop, and you'd get your old, your bag of flour or something, and then in your change you'd get this coin with votes for women written on it. And it's almost like kind of guerrilla tactics to get messages across, kind of underneath the radar of this mad patriarchal society that was keeping the voice of women down. So it's kind of using like an everyday object. It's like defacing an image of the king with this text. So I think it's incredibly powerful. And to think, this is done by people who were kind of risking everything, risking jail, and eventually one of the protesters was killed by the king's horse. So it's really important stuff. So kind of moving on through the last century, this is in the 1960s, the kind of civil rights era in America. So this poster, "I'm a Man," was part of a protest, kind of saying that, talking about racism and how racism was endemic within society, and still essentially is, I suppose. So when you see that same text repeated over and over again, all these individuals holding the same piece of text, and it just reinforces this idea about common humanity and single messages and powerful messages, and how stuff like this, it's very simple typography. There's nothing complicated about it. It's the message, and it's the way that it's applied, and how these things connect with people to create change and to create community and, essentially improve the world. So this is May 68, the Paris students in Paris. So these are posters that were created by the students in collaboration with the workers who were striking. So May 68 was a huge moment in French politics. So they'd had the French Revolution the century before, and this was like emancipation for the working class. So the students at the art college in Paris created this thing called the Atelier Populaire, which is a workshop where these posters were screen printed on a kind of daily basis to kind of get the message out on the street, and to create a communication between a community. So, imagine in those days, it's kind of pre smartphones and the way that we're connected now. So this was like the social media of its day. So these messages, they almost like created memes, and it's kind of using political language to communicate with everybody else within the protest. So these have now become iconic and like prime examples of protest graphics. When you think of protest graphics, you think of May 68, definitely. So this is around the same time. So this is John Lennon and Yoko Ono promoting their record, "Merry Christmas, War is Over." So this was in response to the Vietnam War. So John Lennon was in a band called the Beatles, and Yoko, his wife, was a Fluxus artist. So she was responsible for John's kind of thinking about how his fame, his like absolute global superstardom, could be used to kind of get these messages of peace across to the world. So they made this poster, which has become iconic, and the message was spread globally in kind of like billboards. This is Times Square in New York. And again, it's very simple typography, simple message, but it's just that single statement, war is over if you want it. And it's kind of like empowering people to stand up to totalitarian societies. We're seeing it today, it's happening right now. And I love the idea of like one man, one person protests. So this is a guy called Stanley Green, and he used to walk up and down Oxford Street in London with this placard campaigning against lust. In his head was created by protein, meat, fish, bird, egg, cheese. So it's this completely crazy, he was like this really odd character who would every day get up, go down to Oxford Street and walk up and down with this placard, and literally everyone would ignore him. But he'd still carry on his protest against peas and beans and sitting. So I just love that there's a real kind of humour and a kind of surrealism, this kind of quite sort of like outsider-ish looking guy with his like little rain jacket and little cap on, So he sold this book, 8 Passion Proteins. So yeah, I just love, again, I really like the typography on this and just the kind of simple message. Sister Carita Kent, so she was a practicing nun and she lived in Los Angeles, and she created these amazing screen print workshops where people were invited in and to create messages that were not just about her faith, but they're about the human condition and the universality of mankind and togetherness through her work, which I just think is incredible. So this is Catherine Hamnett, the fashion designer, meeting Margaret Thatcher in Downing Street while Thatcher was Prime Minister. So at the time there was a big anti-nuclear protest against these things called Pershing missiles, nuclear warheads that would kind of, rain down chaos on the world. So Catherine Hamnett was invited to Downing Street for a reception. So she went in with her jacket done up, and as soon as she knew she was going to get the photograph with Thatcher, she undid the jacket to reveal this message: 58% don't want Pershing. And it was this, she was like holding, grasping Thatcher's hand, and also, this really amazing, courageous action. So in a way, I connected back to the suffragettes and that kind of typographic dress. So yeah, a big moment. And this is an artist called Jenny Holzer. So the first time I went to New York, just after I'd left college, there was this installation on all the porno cinemas on 42nd Street. So Jenny Holzer had taken over these billboards, and she'd put up these messages: savour kindness because cruelty is always possible later. It's a whole series of statements that are kind of open-ended and kind of challenging, and it's like poetry, but it's campaigning, and I just love the whole idea of this piece of work. So that's something that has kind of fed into my way of thinking. So all these examples are all things that I'm conscious of in my work, and that I'm connected to through history and through the kind of things that I've ended up getting involved with. Phew. How are we all doing? That's a big lot of information to take in. So yeah. So back to me. So this is back to my story now. So I went to Royal College, met my wife, got married in Las Vegas by Elvis, as you do. And then we were living in London, we had our children, and then we kind of wanted to get out of the city and live in a kind of quieter, more rural place. So we moved down to Rye in East Sussex, which is down on the coast. So this is back in 2004. So we moved down there, and Rye is this like amazing like medieval town that was like it's kind of a quirk of history that it still remains, really. It's kind of it's on the coast of the Channel, and it was constantly being raided, and there's like smuggling, and there's like a wall around the town, and it's all medieval streets and everything. It's amazing. And they've got a printers there called Adams of Rye. So when we first moved down, I saw these amazing posters, letterpress posters, and I just had to find out where they were all printed. So on the bottom left it says printed by Adams of Rye, which is on the high street of the town. So I went in. So Adams is like this old-fashioned shop, and at the back it says printing work strictly private. So I tentatively knocked on the door and went inside, and it's this amazing letterpress workshop full of wood and metal type. It's from a different era. It's like, that's me being amazed by it. What's in that box? Something interesting. Let's have a look. So yeah, drawers and drawers of type. Oh, look at that. Lovely. So when I was at the Royal College, I did some typography workshops with a guy called Alan Kitching, who is an amazing kind of typographer and wood type specialist. So I was familiar with wood type and its production and the kind of cheapness and flexibility of it. So I went in there and said, I'm a graphic designer from London. Can you print a poster for me? And they were like, yeah, sure. So here's a little film of what it's like at Adams. Can we have the sound, the audio up a little bit? So yes, that print was for Shelter, the housing charity. So that was a few years after I'd kind of first started printing there. So this is the first one that they printed for me. Work hard and be nice to people. So it's kind of the piece of work that's kind of gone on to be my best known piece, I suppose. So I went in there and asked them to print this, and I said, can you print a poster that says work hard and be nice to people? And I just gave them kind of very simple instructions, make work hard bigger than be nice to people and centre it. And they said, I'll be ready at the end of next week. So I said, oh, okay, what do I get a hand in, the typography or the layout? And they said, oh, we'll just print it and we'll see if you like it. So I said, okay. So I kind of left it to them. And I went in the next week and they'd printed this. And I was like, oh, that's lovely. So it's almost like, oh yeah, and the words themselves was something I overheard in Sainsbury's on Clapham High Street. There was an old lady in the queue in front of me and she was talking to the checkout girl. And she was saying, well, the secret to a happy life is to work hard and be nice to people. And it was just one of those phrases that was almost like, wow, that's kind of, it's on the verge of being cheesy, which it could be, but it's also true. And it's just that thing of like something that has kind of become a cliche, has got a kind of grain of truth in it about, just be nice to people, don't be horrible. And it's like, it's a basic human thing. So I thought that was a good phrase to kind of make a poster out of. So I made this, the first poster, we printed 300 copies. It's back in 2004. And then since then, it's just been in constant production up until last year when I kind of ended production on it. So because I've got this very fragile ego, I'm constantly looking for myself on the internet, seeing what, if people are taking notice. So I love finding pictures of the work out in the world. So this is one of my favourite images of the poster, in this really bleak, windowless office in the middle of somewhere. And the boss has thought, I know, I'm going to really motivate the troops to work hard and be nice to people. So I just love how there's this little kind of moment of kind of humanity and beauty in this otherwise bleak and sterile environment. So it's great when you see it, people interacting with it. So this is a misunderstood youth in suburban Britain. A mum and her kids somewhere in America. The kids are obviously ignoring the poster, playing whatever it is they're playing. It's kind of popular in lots of different areas. That's just rude. I didn't do that one. But I kind of agree with it as well at the same time. So yeah, a friend of mine sent me that. I was like, wow, that's amazing. And then, so I got an email from this woman and she said, I really like your poster. I've had a tattoo done. So I was like, wow, impressive. So yeah, I said, well, it's actually copyright infringement. So my lawyer got in touch with her lawyer, and now that portion of her thigh is technically my property. So whenever she wears shorts, I get, a small payment. That may or may not be true. But I just think it's incredible that, I could get this piece of type set in letterpress, and then by whatever weird means happens, it ends up being tattooed on somebody's leg. So yeah. So this is so kind of like moving forward a few years. So I've kind of I've done a few books so far. I've done about 4 or 5 books so far, and this is a little paperback called "Work Hard and Be Nice to People." So this is like a little kind of like handbook, kind of like it ends up being almost like a bit kind of self-helpy, kind of creative nuggets of ideas and things. So it's just a little format paperback. So it's kind of lots of bold type and kind of ideas. So all these ideas were distilled from an earlier book called Make It Now. So this kind of turned into a different... So the publishers wanted to make a paperback version of Make It Now, but I ended up kind of rewriting the whole thing and redesigning it. So it's kind of a separate book, really. So all these like little ideas about kind of ways of working, and and it's kind of about just being a person as much as about being a designer or visual communicator. So it's about everything, really. So it's my little handbook for navigating your way through life. You get the idea. It's available in all good bookshops, and if anyone's got a copy with them, I will sign it for £1. So kind of going back to all the stuff about kind of protest and environmental messages and all that stuff. So this is the first time I really engaged with all that stuff. This is back in 2010. And it was the Gulf of Mexico oil spill. So it was a huge, I think it's like one of the largest environmental disasters that basically, oil that was being drilled kind of ignited, and they couldn't kind of cap it's like because of the rocks on the seabed, just this oil was just like gushing out for kind of weeks. This fire just went on for weeks and weeks. So it was like a huge environmental disaster, especially on the kind of Gulf Coast of America. So this friend of mine, Tom, who was creative in an agency in Brussels, got in touch and he said, we're going out next week and we're going to gather some oil and we're going to print a poster and we're going to sell the poster and donate all the proceeds to help with the cleanup and, you know, to kind of make a point about this thing happening. So I was like, great, I'll design something really quickly. So I created a design and sent it over. And then the next thing I knew, they were in this screen print studio in New Orleans, and they were printing the poster. So that's the actual. So the guy there is screen printing with the sand that Tom picked up off the beach that was kind of mixed in with the crude oil from the spill, which was like just covering these beaches. And that was the poster, oil and water do not mix. So it was using that really simple phrase that is, you know, kind of maybe conjures up images of two things not going together and maybe two, you know, people not coming together, or there's lots of things kind of wrapped up in the message, but just very simply delivered in the typography. And because it was printed with the crude oil and the crude was mixed with sand, it destroyed the screen print bed that they were using, and it created this amazing texture. So we created a website and put it out. So this is 2010. It's just sort of at the beginning of social media and how all that stuff became much more important. So as a result, it kind of got news coverage. It got in the Guardian, and it kind of got in some of the broadsheets. And then we got a message from NBC in America, and they said, "Can we interview Anthony live on the breakfast show?" That was an American accent, by the way. So I was like, yeah, I can do an interview. And they said, we're going live in 10 minutes. So I was like, right, okay, let's do it. So this is the most embarrassing moment of my entire life, captured for your enjoyment.
An artist in London is using his creativity to shed light on the devastation brought on by this year's massive oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico. His posters, "Oil and Water Do Not Mix," are printed with the crude that washed ashore in Louisiana. Anthony Burrill is the man behind the screen prints and joins me now on Skype. Anthony, let's start. These are limited edition posters that you've created. Can you tell us more about this project?
Yeah. So yeah, the next 30 seconds is excruciating. I'll show you that next time. So it was about, you know, getting the message across and, you know, kind of capturing people. And I think when things are in the news cycle, things, you know, you only have a very short window to kind of to capture people and to talk about things that are happening. So you have to move really fast with that stuff. So that was 2010. So that kind of fast forwarding now to 2019. Just before the pandemic hit, we thought things were bad when there were the huge wildfires in Australia. So this was, you know, kind of like devastating fire ripping through the countryside, destroying wildlife and the environment. So there was a group of designers in Sydney, and they all got together to create an exhibition as a response to this, and they asked international designers to kind of they were invited to make a piece of work using charcoal from the wildfires. So they got in touch, and I said, yeah, that sounds like something I'd be really interested in. And then like a week later, this box arrived full of like lumps of Australian charcoal, which is incredible to think it had come from this site of an ecological disaster to my hand. In a way, and it's kind of like it's that connection between you and things actually happening, and how you can respond to that through who you are as a person and what you do through your work. So lots of things were kind of wrapped up in this. So I mixed so I ground up the charcoal and mixed it with printing medium and with some ink, and printed with it. So I work in a screen print workshop close to where I live. So my friends Steve and Tracy, they let me go in there and kind of use their facilities, and they print a lot of stuff for me. So yeah, so there's a little film about making it here. Oh yeah, the poster said "No safe place," and it was about, it's kind of talking about the wildfires in Australia, but it's also talking about the planet and how the environment is being kind of degraded and effectively so rapidly degrading. So yeah, so it's about that. So I used letterpress type and scanned it in at high resolution to make the design for the screen print, and I wanted the type to kind of occupy as much space as possible in the poster, so that it was almost like the negative space you were looking at, and the black print has got a kind of texture and a kind of grit to it from the charcoal. So yeah, but I kind of I document my projects as well as I can. I work with a filmmaker, Tom Sharman, and I'm like, oh, Tom, I'm doing a print. Do you want to come down and film it? So he kind of comes down, and we sort of capture the process, because it's so kind of fleeting. That the action of making work is really fleeting, and it's great to capture it and kind of show it as part of the communication of the piece. So it's actually using the physical material to make the work with. So this is a kind of ongoing collaboration with Music Declares. So Music Declares are kind of part of, they're an offshoot of Extinction Rebellion, and the single aim is to make the music industry sustainable and less harmful to the environment. So this single phrase that they use repeatedly, no music on a dead planet, is a phrase that they came to me with and said, can you create a design with this, and we're going to make some t-shirts. And it was something that that then connected with artists. So these are all musicians and people in the music industry who've all kind of worn this t-shirt and kind of support the campaign. So, and this was kind of during the pandemic, when actually performance and being out in public was difficult. So kind of showing musicians kind of supporting the campaign, these are all like at home or in the studio or things like that. So it's kind of, and then very gradually this campaign grew and grew. And I think by using a single message and repeating it and showing it with a huge range of people from lots of different backgrounds and lots of interests, and it's kind of just showing that there's this very singular connection that people have just through this one phrase. So it's kind of, so for me it's exciting to see how simple typography like this, it's set in a very simple way, can again connect in a way that becomes much bigger than the actual, just the bit of typography. So yeah, I'm kind of continuing doing stuff with them, and we've kind of worked on different translations for all the different groups all around, kind of globally. So as well as kind of like working with NGOs and charities and organisations, I do my own kind of art practice now. So this was a commission for Harewood House, just near Leeds. So they were organising an exhibition about contemporary craft, and I was invited to kind of make two pieces for the show. So this film kind of explains the whole thing, really. My name's Anthony Burrill. I'm a graphic artist. I specialise in typography and words and the combination of words and ideas. I think what I do most is just observe things. I'll take photographs as well, but they're just reminders of how I think I connected emotionally to the place. I was commissioned by Harewood to produce two pieces of work. One of them's a 6 metre high tower, and the second piece is an installation that sits in the entrance hall. When you first see the building, the way that the stones kind of interlock and the level of craft that's within the building, it just set my imagination going, really. The ideas came fairly quickly, thinking about the geometry and the symmetry of the building. A place like Harewood, what is its place today? Should they be pristine environments, or should they be kind of challenged in a way by contemporary ideas? I use traditional techniques to produce the work. The letterpress typefaces that I use are from over 100 years ago. Those letter forms, they were originally created to produce advertising and kind of very bold, simple designs. I worked with Thomas Mayo to produce the large woodblock characters. He works with a laser cutter, which is, it's a modern piece of technology, but to kind of replicate traditional wood letters. The collaborative aspect was really important as well, working with individual craftspeople to produce specific things that then led on to the next stage of production. I think my favourite part of the project was the printing. Seeing the wood being inked and then pressed and coming out of the press, smelling of ink, having a smudgy quality, at the same time very precise. In a way, a kind of ridiculously huge amount of work to produce something that turns out to be very simple. It's a kind of visual puzzle. It maybe takes a second for you to kind of work it out. The tower, it feels like it's just appeared there, Is it part of a construction? It's a very large object, so obviously it's going to change people's perceptions of the house, and it's going to start the dialogue that hopefully is further addressed in the exhibition. To kind of be invited to make work for someone like that was incredible, and it's kind of just this kind of like symmetrical mirror is kind of represents the printing process. So the panels on the left are the printing blocks, and then the panel on the right is the letters that were printed by letterpress. So so that was like the maximum letter size I could use on the press that we were printing on. So that kind of created the kind of physical side of these objects. So it's within a space, the completely historic environment. That's a Jacob Epstein sculpture in the middle, and the interior is by Robert Adam. So yeah, amazing stuff. So Harewood is so they're having another craft biennale this summer. So again, they're inviting, I think it's like a dozen different craftspeople to interact with the house and kind of put work in there, and to have some kind of dialogue with the building. So kind of this is like more recent stuff now. So this print, You and Me, the one on the right, I did for the Evening Standard I think it's in 2019. So I made a print of it, and then had the genius idea of swapping the letters around to kind of make a kind of sort of companion thing. So in a way, it was almost like the typography and the letter forms kind of created this work, and it's the simplest phrase you can imagine, just like 5 letters and an ampersand, you and me, then flips around me and you, and it's just that, it's almost like everything that you need to say in one phrase. It's about human relationships, and it's about how you connect with the world and the people in it. So it becomes something that's kind of quite, kind of something that has kind of turned into something else much bigger than the actual thing itself. So I made this piece, and then I was commissioned to do this wall in Leeds. And so I kind of adapted that design to kind of like work with the building, and just do this simple repeat, me and you, you and me, through the bottom and through the top of the building, as if it's like a continuous strip, really. So the commission came through a company called In Good Company, and they work with property developers and creatives to kind of make street art in Leeds. So this is the first time I'd ever done anything of this scale on the street, and it's almost like, for me, it's got much greater resonance because I studied in Leeds, and this building is very close to the railway station, where I took the train to travel to London. So there's a real kind of deep resonance for me in this piece. So yeah, we were planning this in 2019, and it launched in 2021. So kind of in the middle of the pandemic, really. And it's one of those things that as soon as I put it on Instagram, it just started connecting, and it just kind of spread and sort of created this amazing momentum. So it's like this building has now become, sort of destination. So you see people getting, engaged in front of it, and like wedding photographers taking pictures in front of it, and it's kind of become part of the Leeds landscape, really.
Whenever you're ready. So firstly, know who you are.
I think I've forgotten. My name's Anthony Burrill. I'm a graphic artist. My approach to visual communication is to keep things simple and direct. I try and say the most with the least, and try and connect with people through words. We wanted to kind of make a kind of recognisable landmark in Leeds that marked a particular moment and a particular time. Especially over the past year, we've seen that the kind of value of those relationships between yourself and your friends and your family, or that relationship between you and people you don't know, and the simplicity of that connection. And I think that connection is something that is our humanity.
It's nice, I like it.
Yeah, it's all true, man. Definitely feels like some kind of homecoming. I studied in Leeds from 1986 to 89. You know, it kind of felt like New York to me. I had a great time in Leeds. So yeah, every time I go back, I just feel nostalgic about the person I was then. I've still got a real love and connection with the North, and every time I return, it reminds me of where I came from and the values it gave me growing up. To kind of return 30 years later and make a really huge piece of public art, huge mural in the heart of the city, it kind of feels I'm completing some kind of journey, some kind of circle of life. It's not just my work, it's everybody I collaborate with. That's something that's important to me. You know, it all belongs to them as well. I'm just really interested to see how people are going to interact with the work. People can give it their own meaning, and you know, as an artist, that's the ultimate goal, is to connect with people through your work and put an idea in people's heads that you know, we are all connected in this way. Every day you can meet somebody different, and that person's going to affect your life in a different way. Just being open, that's what we need to do, and just celebrate that. So it's yeah, it's quite an emotional thing to, you know, to kind of think about the work and how it, you know, the time that it was made in, and you know, those kind of connections with, you know, with my past and with how all that stuff kind of works. So yeah, it's but yeah, just with a few words. So it kind of shows the power of how you can connect with people in just, you know, as simple as possible. You know, just having black and white, massive text on the wall. So yeah, it's cool. So yeah, just kind of finish off with a few other things. So I kind of, you know, continually make prints, and you know, everything is. So you know, this one, question everything, is just about, you know, looking at your place in the world and how you know, what responsibilities you have, and you know, especially as somebody who's developed a voice and, you know, a kind of following that then, you know, you're almost obliged to kind of continue connecting with all this stuff. So this was like for a newspaper project I was working on with some of the students at the Royal College. So I had the type question everything set and scanned in really large. So when I brought it into the format that I was going to print on, the type was massive, and it was like, it's too big for the poster, and it was on its side, and it was almost like, actually that's really interesting, just having like the kind of bits of letters cut off, so you have to kind of, you're almost kind of like working out what it says, and then it's kind of by questioning things, you know, it's kind of, you find things out. So yeah, it's like a kind of simple visual kind of way of presenting the type that kind of reinforces the message. Again, with this one, action, not words, so it's kind of like, you know, I'm using words to make action, not just use words. So it's almost like it kind of like negates itself. You know, this poster should actually destroy itself because there should be action, not just words. So, so yeah, I kind of like reversed letters and things and kind of played around with type. So everything has got the same kind of DNA. You know, everything is kind of like wood letter type, and I just use a small selection of typefaces. But each time I create a new poster, it's kind of like I'm working with this sort of soup of inspiration and kind of creating these things. And a lot of the time I kind of just I just think about the words that I'm going to say and how I'm going to say it, and you know, I can be just doing other things. You know, I don't really design things in front of the computer. I design things when I'm kind of outside, or I'm doing other things, or you know, just like kind of letting my brain think freely about ideas. So then when I do come to actually create a poster design, it's something that happens very quickly. You know, I probably only spent like half an hour just kind of like working on the type, and then it's done. You know, it's like there's nothing else needs to be added really. And again, kind of, you know, working with type and kind of the way that this typeface in particular is kind of quite curvy, and it's got lovely relationship to each other. And I'm always looking at the positive and negative space between the type and the background. And I use black and white pretty much all the time now. I occasionally use yellow or red if I'm feeling a bit crazy. And then just single words. I'm drawn now just to single words and the power of a single word and a simple statement. So this was a previous print for War Child benefit poster. And then how that phrase "change everything" is, it's almost like the end of all these statements. It's like, well, what do you want to do? You just want to change everything, literally everything, through society, the way that society works and the way that humans kind of treat the planet. So yeah, we've just literally got to change everything. So yeah, it's a big job to do. So this was this is the final thing I'm going to show you, almost the penultimate thing I'm going to show you. So this was a commission from a poster company who've got lots of poster sites around the country. And when they have like free spaces, they just give them over to artists to put a piece of work on there. So this was in January this year, and it kind of, I think they went across everywhere sort of the end of January, beginning of February. And again, this little film captures it. So that's the kind of first big work I've made this year, and it's almost like the way that we made that film was a kind of feeling of chaos and lots of things happening simultaneously. This is all shot in London, and it's almost like kind of returning back to the city after 2 years of absence and kind of reconnecting with all, you know, this sort of urban environment. And the way that the work, every idea is a useful idea, is then sort of dotted around the place, and just almost like, you know, but kind of rethinking and remaking and kind of renewing. So yeah, so that was that one. And then last week, so I've been watching the news, obviously, and it's just, it's like, how can you respond to what's happening in the Ukraine? And it's kind of, you know, you kind of want to show, you want to make a comment, show solidarity with the people, and create some kind of message, and it's like, what other message is there apart from peace? You know, this kind of goes way back to, you know, the John and Yoko stuff. You know, she's recently made a piece, a work, Imagine Peace. So I kind of set the type, and it was just a repetition of the word peace. You know, it's just like, this is all we want. You know, we want to kind of create peace, and we want to live in peace, and not rest in peace. That's weird, isn't it? So we printed this poster. So we put it on Instagram with a friend of mine, Gary, who's got a print studio in Brighton. We put it on Instagram last week, and then over the weekend sold lots of copies, and all the money's going to War Child. So that's a charity who I work with on quite a few campaigns. So yeah, and it's kind of, you know, what's the alternative? It's like, you know, I'm a graphic designer. You know, I work with type. I've got to kind of put a message out there. I've got to say something. I've got to have my voice out there, and you know, it's a voice of simplicity every time, and it's just about peace, and it's about how, you know, we've just come out of the pandemic, and now we're hit with you know, this war. So it's kind of, it's pretty crazy times to be making work about the world, but you know, there are big subjects, and it's like you can't shy away from that in your work. You know, you've got to think about yourself and your friends and your family, and how all this stuff is kind of affecting everybody, and how that connects with you as a person and your work, and the kind of work you want to make, and how you want to, you know, hopefully change the world and make it a better place. Phew. So yeah, there you go. That's my rant over with. So yeah, but you know, I'm positive, and I think things have got the potential for change. And I think if people, you know, come together and, you know, create change, you know, it's like stuff can happen. So there we go. So are we going to do a Q&A?
Yeah, we are. Yeah. Yes, please. Thank you. I don't think I'm alone in saying that was absolutely fantastic.
Thanks.
It's lovely to see your process, lovely to see the projects that you've worked on, your body of work, and yeah, long may it continue.
Hopefully.
Can I ask, has anybody got any presents? Any questions? Oh, hands are up. Gabby, let's, okay, I'll do my...
Hi, Anthony. Gabi
Hi.
is my name. Nice to meet you.
Hi.
So I have a question about your process. You went through it and you said you're using a lot of letterpress and metal press. Do you go back to the digital with whatever you're getting from there and then carry on like that? Or is everything letterpressed and metal pressed? Also, another question. With the first work hard and be nice to people, was that something that you carried on with Adam Rai, or that was like, because you said you were living in London or somewhere close to London, I assume that you might have went with another typography?
No. So the original Work Hard poster was always printed letterpress. The vast majority of that poster was like pure letterpress wood type, and then I've kind of done a few kind of screen print variations on it, but it's so I always return to letterpress. So maybe it's a kind of reaction against technology, or a kind of searching for the kind of humanity in the type and the kind of worn roughness that kind of feels warm and human in a way. So I respond more to kind of things that are slightly imperfect and slightly distressed and kind of rough. And it's like whenever I'm away, I'm on holiday with my family, I always go down a little side street and take a photograph of a sign, you know, and everyone thinks I'm crazy because I'm sort of drawn to all this stuff, you know. I just take photographs of bits of type that have been there for 50 years and all kind of crumbly, So yeah, so I'm really drawn to that stuff. So the way I work now, I've got lots of type samples scanned in at high resolution, and I kind of create layouts with the wood type from the original. But then other times I kind of print directly with wood type as well. So it depends on the project. Because a lot of the time I'm making like large screen prints, like A1 posters and things, and it kind of working digitally in collaboration with the wood type, it kind of gives me a flexibility that I can kind of work with the type in slightly different ways. But always in my head I'm thinking of the kind of physicality of the type and the simplicity. So I don't kind of play, kind of distort the type or anything like that. I can kind of keep it as it comes from the letterpress impression. So yeah.
Smashing. Thank you very much. Did you have a question? Yeah.
Hey, so I was just wondering why, is there a reason you specifically like to work in black and white? Like, do you find creativity in minimalism, or do you like the restriction of a lack of colours?
Yeah, exactly those points. It's kind of, it's that thing, especially digitally, you've got about 3 trillion variations. You can just kind of make work that is, has got lots of variation, and you can play around as much as you like. But with just using wood type and keeping it as simple as possible, I'm kind of restricted, and I like that restriction to kind of work within that space where I only have a few options. Because I've got a few options, I'm more ingenious and inventive with the typography. So, and I think I'm just drawn to simplicity as well, and to kind of things that are kind of reduced down and, not too visually layered or too visually lacking in a kind of connection with reality. So I'm really into the kind of physicality of the type and the way that comes through in the work, that it kind of feels like it's been made by a real thing. I'm not against digital. I embrace all aspects of like digital communication, and I'm massively into Instagram, especially, kind of like sharing work. So I just think it's interesting, to kind of like have a reduced amount of things within your toolkit. It's like just using a single instrument, or using a single color. And I like black and white because it's very strong. It kind of cuts through other things. It's it's like when we kind of like edit films, I always say, can we make it black and white? Just get rid of all the things you don't really need to kind of see the kind of simplicity of it. So yeah, so it's all that stuff really.
Does anybody else have a question? Anybody else? Okay, Anthony. What methods do you recommend to experiment with typography and printing at home without access to machines?
I would imagine things like stencil type and kind of like cutting things out manually, and creating like a kind of toolkit that you can use completely analog, to kind of to get away from the computer and kind of make things physically, kind of you can cut out letters from cardboard and then stick them down, roll some ink on them, and then take an impression. It's kind of like almost like potato print kind of simplicity. The letterpress printing technique is, it's like ancient, isn't it? It's like Caxton invented it a million years ago, and it's kind of just the real simplicity of just cutting letters out in reverse and then printing them so that they come out and, create interesting textures. And you've got that real, it's almost like a kind of painterly quality to the typography then, and a kind of physicality, and you can create large letters, and just have fun with it, really.
Smashing. Any more questions? Oh, over here. No.
Hi, Anthony. Thank you for the talk. Really enjoyed it.
Thanks.
I just want to ask, because people have become more politically aware, with a lot of reason to be, do you think it'll be physical means of getting messages across are going to become more important through screen printing, zines, or anything like that?
Yeah, definitely. And anything, the way that demonstrations are kind of gradually being criminalised, and all that stuff. It's just like, having been on demonstrations, and there is a real kind of togetherness, and there's a power in that when you see, post-pandemic, when you start seeing people massing together again, campaigning against things. It makes you realise there's a lot of people, like-minded people, interested in things, and that's why I think they want to kind of suppress it a bit. But I think kind of the passing of information through graphic design, it's like, think of the May '68 stuff. It's like that was the social media of its time, and it's it's kind of getting messages and ideas around that is maybe not in the digital realm. It's like physical, and it's like physical stuff. You can pin it on your wall, or you can put it on a billboard, or it's like that stuff kind of gets through to people in quite a subtle way, I think, sometimes. So yeah, I think posters will always have their place, definitely.
Any more? Anybody else got any more questions? Oh, Andre, over there.
Hello. So my question is, so a lot of corporations and stuff use inks as like very polluting to the environment. So, but you create your own ink using raw materials. Do you think at some point that we can get behind that type of ink use?
Yeah, I think it's using I think the actual amount of resources that I personally use within the work is minuscule, really, in comparison to like a printing of a magazine or something like that, because I'm making artwork. But then I'm sure my digital footprint is we've all got that. We're all kind of creating a problem with all our use of digital constantly. So it's something that you don't think about, and it's another thing to kind of deal with, I suppose, really, and to kind of figure out how you think about that. But yeah, just kind of using things like water-based inks and non-solvent based stuff. It's much better for the environment, and I think a lot of people are kind of moving over to that form of production. All the paper I use is all recycled. Whether that's like, people even say that virgin paper is less harmful than recycled, but it's like I suppose it depends how you take things, really. But yeah, I think it's all our own personal responsibilities to think about the materials that we're using, and especially when you're kind of getting things printed, and to look for vegetable-based dyes and recycled materials as much as possible, and be ingenious with print as well. You don't always have to go for like super elaborate full colour printing. Black and white's much more powerful. Yeah.
Smashing. Do we have any more? I've got a few questions here that some of you have asked, or you put to Anthony, so you may not want to ask them at the moment. So I've got a few of them, Anthony, for you here.
Fire away.
Right. How did you initially get into graphic design? What was the bit that sparked your interest?
I think kind of growing up in the 70s, and just being aware of I suppose like kids' cartoons, like kind of I'd come home from school and just be watching Rhubarb and Custard, and kind of all that stuff, and it's kind of like this like hand-drawn stuff, and then a bit later on kind of like band logos. So it used to be a thing at school when you know, if you're into a band, you'd draw their logo on your school bag to show how cool you were.
Yeah, I had a few of them.
So yeah, so like, you know, I kind of like redraw, like I could do the Adam and the Ants logo perfectly, and then yeah, just slowly like that, and just like I think being into music, I've always really, you know, just really been obsessed with music, and then starting to buy like the Enemy and the Melody Maker, and you know, seeing like record sleeves, Kraftwerk, Man Machine, all that, you know, really strong visuals.
Yeah.
And it's like, I think, yeah, I started off by wanting to design record sleeves.
Yeah, it's a good way to go.
Yeah, definitely.
Nowadays, what are the main things that act as your inspiration?
I think, you know, doing stuff like this is, I think, crucially important for me. I think because I haven't been in a room with amazing people for a couple of years, it's kind of like, it sort of kind of makes some kind of connection that you're actually talking about your work and talking to people and kind of feeling the engagement with that. And I think yeah, it was quite difficult, you know, just being in the studio kind of locked away. And I think, you know, I've always travelled a lot. I've always kind of like to get out in the world and kind of experience things. So I think it's just kind of being a human being, being in the world. You know, that's the inspiration, really.
Excellent. Do you have a favourite typeface?
Yes, I do.
God, what would that be?
Yes, it's the one that I use for everything I do. It's like, you know, that sort of like condensed wood type, really. So yeah, I just love it. And it's almost like, because it's, you know, it's from over 100 years ago, and it's kind of like, in a way, it's kind of beyond fashion in a way. And I kind of feel like I've made it so connected with me and my work that it's like I kind of own that little bit of history. Yeah. Kind of, yeah.
Fantastic. Do you design your own typefaces?
I have done, yeah. So yeah, I've done about 4 or 5 typefaces for different foundries and things. Kind of, it's like stencil typefaces. Like I designed a typeface called Lisbon that was based on a metal stencil typeface that I found in Lisbon, weirdly. So that was brilliant. So I found this complete set of metal stencils, and then developed an upper and lower case from that with a foundry called Colophon.
Oh, smashing.
Yeah.
Are the quotes that you use yours?
Yeah, pretty much all of them. No Music and Undead Planet, that came from Music Declares. But yeah, pretty much everything else is stuff what I've thought of from my head.
Are there any social issues that are important to you that you haven't yet worked on that you would like to work on in the near future?
I don't know, really. I think it's kind of just that thing about humanity, like common humanity, and kind of just making that connection through the work. That's something that I think has just developed as I've kind of got a bit older and I've got more life experience and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm up for amplifying the voice of any pressure group, really. You know, as long as it's the right kind of pressure group, obviously. Yeah.
How do you go about choosing suitable fonts, typefaces for particular messages? I
think because I use quite a small range of typefaces, it's just, and I know them really well, I know them intimately, and I know their character, and I know how they sit together, and you know, that positive, negative space, and the kind of weights and things. So I've got all that in my head, and I kind of design things in my head and kind of try things out, and then pretty much as soon as I'm putting the design together, it kind of happens in the way I've kind of been envisaging it, I think, really.
Smashing. And one final one, everybody gets asked this at Industry Week, is what one piece of advice would you give your younger self in order to become a successful designer if you were the same age as these here?
Yeah, it's. I think it's just that thing. Just just believe in yourself and trust yourself. And I always kind of battled with shyness, and I was always kind of the person who wouldn't ask questions at lectures and all that stuff, and kind of go. But it's kind of like you've just got to deal with the world in your own way, and kind of make things work how you want them to work. And I think it's because I'm quite a sort of I suppose like softly spoken, backgroundy kind of character. I'm not like a massive extrovert, but through the work I do these enormous building-sized letters, and it's like super in your face and powerful and strong. So I think through the work, that's how I get my inner character out through the work, really. So, but yeah, you just got to believe in yourself and work hard, be nice to people.
Be nice to people.
Boring.
What amazing message to end it on. Does anybody else have any questions? Okay, in that case, come and give Anthony a massive round of applause. Thank you very much, folks. Yeah, I hope you enjoy the rest of Industry Week. And we will see you Friday, I do believe. Yeah, thank you very much.